Hi, Aleksander Czeszkiewicz. Thank you very much for continuing our conversation where we left off last time. Yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're coming out with, especially to do with our history and what's happened here on Earth. And I feel like you have a very strong connection to consciousness and the unified field, and you understand what's going on. So I really resonate with your work. And yeah, I hope that we can talk more today about what you've researched and maybe perhaps how you've come across this field, and yeah, maybe anything else that you'd like to say about how you've connected in with this sort of information. That'll be good. And yeah, thank you.
Yes, I think I talked to some extent about it in during our last conversation, but I will retell it again. It was a very interesting thing because, from a very early childhood, I was interested about the history, about the universe, but it wasn't until I started participating in historic competitions that I started questioning all of these ideas that I were taught at school. And one time I was during my middle high school, and it was last year of middle high school in Poland, and there was like a new way of education, and it was to be eliminated completely. And because I was the last year of this middle high school and it was to be eliminated, it was very hard to go to any high school because there were like double the amount of people, because people from the existing middle high school and people who were in the primary school but with longer years. So it was a bit problematic. And in order to avoid any problems, I attempted historic competitions of a very high regional levels. And if you were to win or achieve a high level in this competition, you could go wherever you wanted when it comes to high school. So in order to be safe, I was always a good student, so I wasn't like very insecure about it. But in order to be, completely safe and sound, I decided to attempt the historic competition because I was very good at history at that time. And in order, to achieve anything in this contest, I needed to know the history from the earliest times of like Neolithic, the Stone Age, Neolithic Revolution, so about 10,000 years BC up until nowadays. And I needed to have a knowledge of a much higher level than the middle high school. It was about when I was 15 or I think between 14 and 16 years old. And at that time, I needed to read and learn a lot from even higher levels, like high school and even above that, from the academic levels. And while I was studying it, I started questioning things because wherever I looked, it looked like, our history is one big complete picture. From the like cavemen, hunter-gatherers, through the first settlements, then first civilizations, up until the modern era. But I found it interesting, because could it be that there was something more to it? Could it be that we do not have an entire picture? I knew from other branches of science like biology, genetics, that we do not know much about the Earth. We do not much about, the history of the Earth. And when it comes even to the remnants of animals like skeletons and stuff like that, we do not have much of them. It is only a small percentage, because when it comes to the time of decomposition of certain materials, natural and unnatural, they decompose really fast in periods of just thousands of years. And if we look at our history in tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years, it may be that our picture of the history and the older times of prehistory are very vague and are very, incomplete. But whenever I looked, whether at, middle high school textbooks, at high school textbooks at higher academic levels, I saw everywhere almost a complete picture of the entire history of humanity and even before that. So I started questioning things. Is it really the case? Or maybe we are so arrogant to think that we know how, broadly speaking, our history happened. But maybe it happened in a different way, but we do not know that. And I found out that the answer may be that we, as the community, as scientific establishment, as people, we are very arrogant about what we know about our history. And I started digging into the history of science. And in history of science, I found out that the history that we know nowadays, so the notion that the first civilizations were Sumer, Egypt, India, the famous saying that everything, the history starts with Sumer, with ancient Sumerian civilization. This view was actually this view actually went mainstream only in 1950s. And actually we didn't know anything about any civilizations of ancient Mesopotamia, including Sumer, less than 200 years ago. All of those civilizations were only discovered in 1840s, so like 180 years ago. And before that, we had of course plenty of mentions of, Sumerian civilization. Even in the Bible, it is mentioned that Abraham came from the Sumerian city of Ur. But because we haven't found any remnants of those civilizations, we were thinking that, these are just fairy tales of our ancestors. But then in the 1840s, we started rediscovering the cities and entire civilizations of Mesopotamia, and we started upgrading our picture. And I asked myself, what if we are in a similar situation? Because all around the world we have mention of previous civilizations. If we take a look at any civilization of ancient times like Greece, Egypt, Sumer, India, all of those civilizations mention that they are not the first ones, but that they are either much older than we think they are, or maybe either way there are like some descendants of some previous cultures. So I asked myself, what if it is a similar case like with the Mesopotamia, with ancient Sumerian civilization, that just nowadays we do not have any evidence, we haven't found Atlantis, Lemuria or other civilizations yet, but what if they really existed? And I found the modern skeptical view of modern science, of modern history, very arrogant, because everyone says where is the evidence for Atlantis? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and so on. But if we look 200 years ago or 250 years ago, we had such a limited point of view on our history that it may be that we are, still not knowing everything about it. And that's how I started, researching Atlantis, researching how old is our history, researching how, scientific historical discoveries are being made and stuff like that. So this was the journey when it comes to the history, and it led to writing at the age of 17 my book Déjà Vu Has Everything Already Been, which I will send you a link to the Amazon.
Yes.
And when it comes to this, it is a very logical, thinking stuff. But parallel to those discoveries, I had also an intuitive, inner journey. And it is very interesting because those parallel journeys of mine were at the same time and were the masculine and feminine principle. This research that led to my book was very masculine, that I wanted to find out. I was searching, I was logically putting stuff, the masculine, the left brain, left hemisphere. And parallel to that, I had an inner spiritual journey of rediscovery that was inner journey, more the feminine stuff, the more creative, the more things that were happening with synchronicities and stuff like that. So it is very interesting that it all started at the same time, and I had two parallel journeys, and I had this one and the second one that made me very into spirituality, because before that I wasn't spiritual at all. I would say that I was rather maybe not atheist, that no, God doesn't exist and stuff like that, but I was rather agnostic. I didn't know if there is anything more than the physical, biological realm of our lives. And because of that spiritual journey, I started having prophetic dreams, synchronicities and stuff like that. I actually started being spiritual and having not a belief in spirituality like in religion, but a more like inner knowing of this spirituality. And it's very interesting because most of the people go the other way around. They are, for instance, religious or spiritual, and they are going into this atheistic position because they think that they are like superior when it comes to intellectual superior. They often think, that they were believing in some like woo stuff, and then they started to be more and more intellectual, and that they are superior than others because they like look what the reality looks like, and they are now atheists and materialists. But this is like a true intellectual superiority, but it is a negative perspective, and the reality is completely different. So it is another thread that I'm interested in, and I think I was speaking about it in the last episode about the materialism, about the idealism. What was first? Either it was mind or matter.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you said a little bit about how your spiritual journey was tied in with the analytical part, because I think that's really important when it comes to this sort of research. I think that's what it might be the key element that's missing in the mainstream academia, that can't pair like what's happened actually here on Earth. And I don't know how to, I don't know if that view will ever come in mainstream academia or how they will pair that, but it really has a very strong, specific tie to all of this. I think that's the key. I don't know if they'll ever open up to the fact that it is definitely like, whether you want to call it channeling, whether you want to call it like inspiration, or whatever it is that comes through, there is a spiritual aspect to all this, I think, because we do have synchronicities, we do have all these things when we're researching stuff, and I think that's an important element to remember. That's why I wanted to ask you, I'm sorry if it was like a similar question to before, but I really I'm also very interested in these topics, and it's just very hard to explain like how they all sort of are interconnected in an analytical and proper manner that people can understand without having to sacrifice maybe their belief systems or religion or whatever it is, because there is that element to it. So it's like, how do you open up those doors without scaring people, and helping them and guiding them through that with the practical sense of the research that you do. So it's like a very tricky path that you're taking.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is all about the polarity, because it is like the left and right hemisphere in our brains, one more analytical and the one more creative. And I find that people in our society are very unbalanced. They are either on the side of logic, like science, like, being intellectually superior even to others. This is the like one end of the stick, let's say, one polarity, and the second one is, the feminine polarity, being very emotional, irrational, and also creative. And I find that, it is very unbalanced in our society, that people are either this way or either that way, and not many people are, balanced when it comes to both creativity and this analytical scientific thinking. So this is the problem, and people are like close in the one and not in the other, and sometimes fear to go to the both ends, because never such polarity and being only on the one end of the stick is good and true. The truth lies in the middle. It lies where everything is, when there is both light and darkness. And people, because they think that they will lose their current position, their current, let's say, creativity, emotionality, like positivity, tends to be really scared of going into this logical, analytical side. And on the opposite end, the people on the analytical, logical side are very scared of going into the unknown and, accepting that our reality may be something more, because, it would be scary. When it comes to the scientific point of view of materialism, that there are only particles and its interactions between them, this point of view show us that, we know the basics of the existing of the universe on the material side of things. We know how the laws of physics work. We know to some extent how biological, animals, our bodies work. And it is very safe because we know so many things, and it would be to some extent scary to us if we were now to accept that there are some ghosts, some energies, or some other laws that are totally unpredictable by our mathematics. So there is of course fear in both of those like sides, ends of the sticks, like in both polarities. One side fears being logical because they think that they will lose like their emotionality. There may be like being to some extent even childlike. There are plenty of adults that are so into this, right feminine side that are totally childlike, that they are not going even to any extent to the other side. And never such things as going to one like extrema are never, either correct or good. You have to be both childlike and both, logical and both an adult. And this is the balance. And on the other side, people who are in this logical, they fear of being like children again and exploring. And the analytical side, the, let's say, left brain side, the masculine side, fears the unknown. And the feminine side, this creative side, right brain side, this emotional side, fears any order, fears, any laws, even in the like new age spirituality, everyone is like to some extent an anarchist, why laws, why should we obey to anything, you know what I mean, or law of attraction, I can manifest whatever I want, there are no limitations, you know what I mean. So both sides are wrong when they are solely in their sides, because sometimes there is a necessity when it comes to this right side of freedom, emotionality, spirituality. There are things that are necessary in order, either to advance, in order to do something. If you want to achieve something, you have to take some steps, like do that, and it isn't like, oh, I will just manifest and it will be, you know what I mean. So both of those sides are limited. They fear going into the other, and this is the masculine feminine polarity. One side is feared of the unknown of the feminine, of the like chaotic nature. Like nature is often like we say mother nature because if we went into the wilderness, like some forest or something, there may be plenty of dangerous stuff there. It is like you cannot predict, it is unpredictable. So the masculine side fears that, and on the other side, those who are only in the feminine, like in spirituality, in emotional stuff, creative and like that, they on the other side fear the order, fear that it would be boring if everyone was set with order, everything would be like gray without any emotions and stuff like that. But our reality is both sides of the stick, and I think we should appreciate both of those sides. We cannot have like chaos and disorder because it would be chaotic, like I mentioned, going to the forest and everything is chaos and you have like nothing, you have no shelter, anything. You need to have some like order, like creating a society, creating a community, creating like a city, a small town, in order to survive, to have like a meaningful life. And this is like how our reality works. And it is interesting because I think I even mentioned it last time, that it is all about the archetypes of plenty of myths from all around the world about, the father, the mother, and the hero that is in between. And the father represents the order, the mother represents the chaos, like Mother Nature, and the hero's journey, which is like the standard motive behind any story, legend, and myth, like a hero that is achieving something, that is overcoming obstacles to be better, to actually, evolve. So the hero is the one in the middle. And I think that every one of us should be a hero. And this is what our ancient ancestors were telling us, that we should embrace both order and chaos. We should, in the land of order, like we live in a society, we have to go into the chaos, into the unknown to explore. And then with that knowledge of the unknown, we have to go back and then it's how we are evolving. And it's the same with science. We have in science some like true beliefs, or even not beliefs, maybe some facts that we can replicate in some experiment, like some physical laws, etc. And we have like some solid grounds in science. We know that there are maybe some particles, that, there is mathematics, physics, biology, it works like that and stuff like that. But in order to evolve in science, we have to go beyond and then go into an expedition into the unknown. Because if we are always in this known region of order, we are not evolving. So this is what you mentioned, that in science we need to evolve and to embrace the feminine, and it is all about about embracing the unknown, what we do not know. And it is the same like motive behind the thing that I mentioned, that we are too arrogant. We think that we know almost everything about our history. It is the same thing. We are so comfortable with the knowledge that we have about our history, so we don't inquire, the skeptics, of course, and, mainstream history. We do not need to search for Atlantis. It didn't exist. It is very comfortable to assume that there was nothing before, because then we have a clear picture, everything is okay, fine, and we can go forward. And it's the same thing as, being only with the known region, like most of the legends or bedtime stories are, there's a hero who lives like in some kingdom, and the kingdom represents this order, these things that we know, because there is a kingdom, people are living in the kingdom, everything is okay because everything is in order. But at some point there is even a dragon or other threat to the society, to the kingdom, and often there is a mention that king cannot cope with this, and that's why we need a hero in the story who will be able to go into the unknown and, overcome some obstacles. Often hero goes to some like mage or some wizard, for knowledge or for superpowers and stuff like that. And then by going into the unknown, he can tame the unknown, he can tame the anomaly. Just like we have anomalies in science. If there are too many anomalies that are inconsistent with our current scientific theories, like some anomalies, some phenomena that would, for instance, be totally opposite to our laws of physics, then we need to upgrade our theories to include that anomaly. So it is the same thing in science, like in this hero's journey, that we have like kingdom, everything is okay, we have all the laws of science, but then there is dragon, there is an anomaly that is threatening us because it may totally disprove our theories, and we don't know what we should do. And then comes the hero, and hero goes into the unknown, so we start searching the unknown, searching things that we ignored up until this point during our lives, and then with the knowledge of the unknown we can face the anomaly and maybe upgrade our laws of physics to include this anomaly, to include this dragon.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that, researchers like yourself that have done all the work and understand, like you've taken that hero's journey, I guess, where you are discovering new things and you're, dismantling the paradigm that's no longer serving anyone. Will that eventually, like obviously a lot of people are awakening to this fact, but do you think that will eventually, influence everyone as a whole, or do you think that it's an individual sort of, like you're doing the hero's journey yourself and everyone has to kind of do it for themselves as well? Or is it like a collective thing?
Yes, I think so, that everyone should be the hero of their own lives and take this journey, because when it comes to my journey, I really attempted a hero journey in a similar way to all those myths, because it is a common universal theme in our lives, in the universe maybe. And my journey started because I was in the known world, so I was actually learning to all those historical contests. I was learning what was known in the textbooks, and I could keep, only learning those textbooks and achieving, high grades, maybe going into like some academic position and stuff like that, and being all the time within the known region. But then I found the anomalies, and I wasn't like that, oh, we should ignore this, is like only a mystery, we don't care about it. I attempted the hero journey because I went into the unknown and I started, searching for things that weren't searched much, because at that time and nowadays still in the mainstream science, the view that our ancient ancestors may have portrayed in their myths and legends some truth, it's like think, oh, these are just fairy tales, you know what I mean. So I attempted the hero journey, I went into the unknown, and I started searching in areas that were not searched by many people or that were ignored, just as in this hero journey. And I think, you know, that every one of us at any level should do that. And why I'm not against science completely, but I often laugh at people who are into this academic like point of view. They want to go into the academic hierarchy because all of that is boring. You know, at any level, even at the highest level of academia, in 85 or 90% of the cases, you're only in the same, you know, thing. You're only with the same like stuff around you, you know. You're, for instance, a chemist, and you are, you know, around the same things, same chemical stuff all the way, all your life. And it's boring, you know. We should, you know, have some like initiative, be those heroes, have some maybe even bravery, and start searching more and more things and expanding. And that's why academia isn't expanding that much when it comes to such areas, and that's why it is so stubborn, because they are always within the same stuff around them, same theories, same facts. Maybe they reshuffle them in different ways. So that's why, you know, I'm not against, of course, science. I used science, I provide, you know, scientific evidence in my book, but, you know, I often laugh at people who are, you know, trying so hard to be in that hierarchy and, you know, even sacrificing their entire lives for nothing, you know. They do not have anything interesting in their lives. They do not have their own hero journey because of that. So, you know, I'm a little bit distance from people like that, and I think that they could waste their life. And it is another archetype, the archetype of the Satan. And the archetype, I think I mentioned it last time, the archetype of the Satan is like culmination of the living in this like known world, living in the order and creating this order and fearing the unknown. And you know, being in this satanic, maybe satanic mentality leads to hell. It is like Satan, hell. These are like things that we think, oh, it is like a fairy tale, that people believe that there is a negative being called Satan and that people, if they are evil, go to hell. But it is much more metaphoric, and it is meaning things that are, you know, happening everywhere around us. It is like metaphors, like archetypes, like universal things that are happening fractally on all levels of our existence. Because, you know, Satan and hell is like the worst place we can ever imagine. And living leads to hell because it is only being in the known zone, and you're like in this, I mentioned, going up into the hierarchies of let's say academia. You are starting to be so in the known zone, you're starting to be so boring, your life starts to becoming so dull that you are starting to having no life. We even say that people that, for instance, always like stay at home, are not happy, like playing video games, they are in the known, in their comfort zones, they're living there are no lives. There is a saying that no life, no life. So it is the same like the satanic living, and this being in no life may be temporary, but it may lead to hell. So it may lead to the accumulation of so many regrets, of so many negative emotions, that it may be unbearable, and it may either, you know, lead to being evil, even to being so angry that someone wants to kill everyone other, you know, like Hitler or something like that, or it may lead to suicide. So, and it is this living of arrogance that I do not need anything that is unknown. I do not need to take this step and become my own hero and go into this journey. And often, I think you notice that often those people that we call no lives, or that later at life become very negative, are people that, you know, were so arrogant that, oh, I don't need to, let's say, explore, evolve, I don't need to go on a journey, I don't need to live a life, explore a life, I can like be here and now and stuff like that. And it is a metaphor of, like, it is similar to Satan, because Satan was one of the most intelligent of angels, and he decided that, he do not need to live in the world of God, so he decided that he's so good, he's so cool, that he will create his own world. And that's how he created, for instance, the material world. It is like a myth, a metaphor. We do not know if it is true, but it is a cool metaphor that, he created his own world because he was so good, so arrogant. And often people who are so arrogant, so, cool, like, they are trying to make they are often making their own, like, small bubbles of where they are, always that, oh, they think they need to live like that, they need to be like that, everyone needs to be like that, and everything outside of their bubble is even wrong, is evil, is bad, and they are, they are trying to not be with those other methods, systems of living. So it is the same in science, it is the same in our lives, and it is the same, of course, at the collective level. If we do not explore and go into the unknown, our lives, like our society, may become totally dull and boring, and it may lead to an accumulation of negative emotions that it may either lead to, like, self-destruction, like thinking that, oh, we need to kill ourselves, and it may be one of the sources of, such a catastrophism that we will kill our planet, there is no hope and such like that. Or it can lead the other way, that, we may be living, but we may kill and destroy everything outside, we may have wars and stuff like that. So at source of that, it is being too much in the known and not going into the unknown. So not being the hero of our own, let's say, life, of our own journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with the fact that you said that it is a very much personal journey for the hero. And I think that even in mainstream thinking that they are working within a framework or a bureaucracy, let's say, and they have strict guidelines where they have to mold their theories within that guideline, right? So it's almost like they're not able to have free thinking in those areas. But the people that are doing the research, the people that are activating their hero archetype, they can still, within that field, affect consciousness, right? They still have a bit of leeway to kind of say, look, I completely disagree with this. This is like, from a skeptical point of view, like they take Atlantis like, nah, that I don't accept that. But there might be just like a little bit of a hint where they're like, okay, but this might be the next scenario where we can kind of guide the academic thinking into opening up a bit more. Because I feel like each and every person has their journey, but even researchers have their framework, right? Like they have a guideline where they can't surpass certain things, because you can get in crazy zone, like you said, like you can get in the whole like everything's pointless and you're gonna suicide kind of thing. So it is a very fine line of balancing that. So I do respect both narratives, and I think that there are people that are working within the systems that are trying to help the truth come out. But it's just very hard, because it's almost like as if there's like two ways of thinking when it comes to mainstream academic history in particular. It's like all these alternative researchers that have invested their whole lives into understanding what like certain things mean and how they link up, and it's like then there's the other side where they're, like you were saying in the other interview, where it's like all segmented, they're not interconnected, but they have history obviously, but they're not interconnected whatsoever. And it's like, well, there's a bit of truth to both obviously, but I feel like as a collective we are kind of suiciding right now. We're kind of like getting to the point where it's all overwhelming. It's too much for a lot of people, because even in everyday mundane life, it's almost unbearable to just even be. Like, it's like, not to mention, you know, the economic situation and all that kind of stuff is kind of built in that way, so that I don't know, we empower ourselves to understand that, I mean, we all have like, we can make a difference, is what I'm trying to say. And that is very much the hero's journey, like, just to understand that you are alone in a lot of this, but as a collective, I think that we can do it if we're on the same page as to finding the truth, especially. And yeah, don't expect everyone to understand where you're coming from, kind of thing, and understand, like, because we are all in our own little bubble, like you said. But it's more of the fact that, you know, if we can just understand, at least at the fundamental truths that we're all seeking, like most of us are seeking, or that are on this path, then we can get somewhere. It's not about having the same opinion, because it's like everyone's got a piece to the puzzle, kind of thing. So there's value in even the scientific part, like you said. So, but it is just trying to break open that just a bit more, so that we have more critical thinking, more philosophical ideas, more interactions as to how consciousness actually works, and how this whole system is affecting us, basically. And it's, yeah, it's an interesting field, because it's almost like it is, because I'm probably one of those people that are more right-sided. I think more creatively, because I that's just my nature. And but I do think philosophical and deeper thoughts as well. And it's like, it's very hard to balance it, like you said. It's very difficult within within, like, your own belief systems, or whether it's trauma or whatever it is, to break free of just systematic thinking that we've got ingrained in us. So just even having the humility to learn from one another, I think that's really important. Yeah, so I do value your research, definitely, because I don't think I'd have the patience to be that analytical, but it's something that interests me in the same regard. So there's value in everything. And I do my own research, but it's not in the same manner as you. So it's not like, yeah, like, everyone has their own experience, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but you mentioned the like spreading of the hero journey, spreading of the ideas only on the analytical level of our conscious minds, because, oh, I do not agree with you, blah blah blah, and showing this research, this is like the tip of the iceberg. We know that our subconscious is, you know, mostly ruling our lives, and how we could, you know, how we could evolve and, you know, share this hero journey. This hero journey is really contagious, but not only the analytical level, because even people with analytical minds would laugh if we say to them, oh, you should take a hero's journey, blah blah blah. But how we happen to actually spread this, and it is the best way, is through inspiration. You know, we may hear like some inspirational, like motivational speeches and stuff like that, but almost always, and most of the speeches that are truly inspirational to us, not only like, because if people were just telling you inspirational words without any inspiration, it wouldn't be inspirational. That's why we shouldn't like just share the ideas, because it isn't inspirational. We should inspire people and see that always things that inspire us, like people who are truly inspirational, like emotionally, are true heroes. Like maybe there are like sports people that, you know, had this hero journey through sacrifices and stuff like that, or maybe like some people from other areas of our lives, but most of them are to some extent heroes, that they experienced this hero journey. And that's why, you know, we should be heroes and be heroic, and this heroism is inspiring, and we should inspire others. And this again, that we are nowadays focusing only on the analytical stuff, like in school, and that's why people are bad at school and not memorizing everything and forget everything, because if you only memorize things for your analytical mind, you will always forget it, and it will be always boring. But if you are truly engaged in something, if you are inspired to learn, then you remember everything and even start creating your own stuff. And the same thing is in trying to change the world by, some like just words that are empty. And if we do not add inspiration to that, these are just words and they will, come and go and they will be forgotten. So what we should do in order to actually change the world and influence the world is only through inspiration. And I mentioned that it is the same stuff like being only in analytical mind, and we know that our conscious mind, conscious thoughts are only like 3 to 5, maybe to 10% of our entire like mind. The rest is subconscious. And if you are inspired, you are doing everything from your emotions, from your entire body, from your subconscious. So then you are engaging like your full potential, not only the analytical mind. And that's why we find often like things that are very scientific or very analytical boring, because it only is for our analytical minds. And we focus, actually our entire society is falling because we are only focusing on the analytical mind. We think that in order, to speak about science, about truth, about discoveries, we need to only use analytical minds. And the same why, all the works of scientists that are not popular science but are, scientific articles and stuff, it's all boring. It is, even to some extent, sometimes it is so stupid because people are according to this, this method, this,
Yeah.
and that's why. And we are making our society like that. We are focusing as a society only about that, and we are forgetting the inspiration and a much deeper level of existence. And it's again with all those stories and myths. Our ancient ancestors were more focused in their myths, legends, and in their entire lives about not the objective word, but about the subjective word. That's why they mentioned the hero's journey. That's why, they often mentioned the subjective experiences, because they knew that this subjectivity, this inspiration leads to action. And by action, by, engaging the entire of our both conscious and subconscious, not only analytical mind, we can actually explore, we can make progress. And nowadays we are focusing only on this, let's say, tip of the iceberg with the logical, with science, maths and stuff like that. And that's why we are not having so much progress in the sense of personal lives. That's why we are falling. Maybe we are, advancing as a society in technology and stuff like that, but as people we are falling. We are, worse and worse. We are more depressed and stuff like that, of course, broadly speaking, on the collective level, because we focus on the thing that is only like a minority of our lives. Our lives are to most extent, the hero's journey, and are to most extent this like subjective thing, and not the objective analytical thing that the science, atheists, materialists, and our entire society is trying to focus on.
Yeah. And I like what you said about the science, because it's almost like they're just repeating thoughts that are from others, that they're not actually, it's just second thought almost. It's like people don't want to think deeper, and it's not, maybe not that they don't want to, but they don't have the opportunity or space to do that, especially in, like the scientific fields. They just don't get the opportunity to do it that way. It's just like they're taught to rethink things almost, like, and it's really sad. I think that's exactly what's making us depressed, because we're not allowed to critically think anymore in school. Like, we get in trouble if we ask questions. And just having an just having a curious mind, I think that really opens up, like, the objective dreamtime sort of stuff that you're talking about, that our ancestors were more open with, because that's the reality that we are unconsciously living somehow, because it influences us, like our dreams and our inspirations, like you said. And there is a negative to inspiration too, which is jealousy. I don't know if you think that inspiration is one thing, jealousy is another thing, but it is the same kind of, because I don't think jealousy, it is negative, but it can be inspiration as well. So it's like, twofold, I guess. And I think it's just coming back. It does come back to your emotions. It does come back to what you're emotionally connected to. And I think that our society is not open enough to understand that we need to release some of our emotions. Like it's just part of our human nature to be able to have, you know, those spaces where we can just release them, whether we know where it's coming from or not. It needs to be understood that, you know, our mental space is influenced by our emotions, and we need to accept that. I think it needs to be more open. I think that's what's lacking, because the deeper empathic connections can't happen unless you release your own emotions and understand your emotional processing. I think that's very important. And I think, yeah, definitely that I feel that would have influenced you on your path somehow, because you said you had a spiritual connection to all of this. And that to me is an emotional connection, you know what I mean? So that's really important, to be grounded in how you feel, where it's coming from. And yeah, I think that's missing. Yeah.
Yes, it is, the same stuff that you mentioned, the dream time. Dream time, like dreaming, is unconscious. This dream time, everything is floating, there are stuff that are unpredictable. It is like an unconscious state, whether it really existed as dream time, or maybe it is like a metaphor of people being so unconscious, like in altered states of consciousness, that they were like dreaming and the world was dreamy to them. We do not know if it is this way or this way, but in both ways, the dream time is like unconscious, subconscious. And throughout the ages, we laugh that our ancient ancestors were primitive, that they believed in so ghosts, woo, and stuff like that. But they were just, more focused on the unconscious, subconscious than conscious. And our evolution, all of the scientific, achievements and stuff like that, and modern society, we are striving towards perfection when it comes to consciousness, like being conscious, being awake. But actually, see the animals. We evolved to some extent from animals, and animals are to large extent unconscious. They are doing, things that are totally not conscious. They are being affected by all of the, internal mechanisms. And if we evolved from animals to some extent, of course, we have plenty of similarities, then, being focused only on consciousness is like a small pinnacle of our evolution. It is like we can have a sword, or let's say, and a spike, and consciousness is the end of the spike, the sharpest one, of course. We think sharply, logically, but it is only, like the edge of the sword. It is like the end of the spike, the sharpest point. And the rest of the spike, or rest of the sword, is all of the subconscious, unconscious stuff. And without the rest, the sharp edge is unfunctional. And the same is with our society. We are starting, to totally ignore the subconscious, unconscious. We start to ignore and the meaning of the dreams. We start to be logical, material and stuff like that. And that's why it is leading us to a fall.
Yeah, it's almost like the foundations have flipped. Like you said, it is an important aspect, and it is what we're aiming for, but it's like you can't build on a foundation that's floppy, which is where we've been taught in school that, you can't critically think for yourself, you can't open your mind to all these aspects where, I mean, the dream time, it's like open for interpretation, like you said, but the fact is our ancestors were open to that dream time, whereas we're not. We're just analytically thinking too much and suppress that part of us for the most part, and it's very difficult to sort of activate that aspect of us within society, especially. I mean, it's just, yeah, it's not something that is very much conscious, I guess, in society. Yeah, so it's, yeah, if we can make it conscious, it would be great. Yeah.
Yes, why we are falling is also because we are, as I mentioned, totally ignoring the subconscious. We are trying to be only awake, and the same people that are awake and, logical and stuff are emotionally drained, depressed, they have terrible nightmares, and they need medications to, eliminate those. And as we mentioned, this like, the sharpest point of the spear of the like, cone is the conscious mind, like the sharpest point 5%, and the rest is the subconscious. And our subconscious is all the time active even if we dream. And consciousness is only when we are consciously awake. And often we, when we are even alive during our day-to-day life, let's say during the day, we often go unconscious, because we go unconscious, and we often lose consciousness and go into our thinking. It is all subconscious, and people are ignoring that. It is this satanic like metaphor, that ignoring that, trying to suppress that, and we often go, we have to do some task logically, and then we have some negative emotions, and we ignore that. We tend to ignore that, and that's why we are falling, because this is like seeds planted. These seeds are growing, and they finally, if we ignore them all the time, after a year or two, can destroy ourselves totally. Destroy ourselves from the inside, from this negativity. And the same, in the satanic point of view, everything is reversed. So the satanic point of view is treating that there is no good and bad. We see that the God, the universe, spirituality is about good and bad. We know that there is positive and negative. We know that there are things that are truly negative or truly evil. But the satanic point of view, which is trying to dominate our society, our politics, is that there is no inherent good and bad, and that's why we think all these satanic like rites go public. That's why we see this thinking that, oh, maybe stuff that we think that were bad, it is all conservative, rightist extremists, but maybe things that we thought were wrong are actually right. It is a satanic point of view that we can maybe allow for it, maybe freedom to do everything, individuality. It is all satanic point of view. And this is if you are only conscious, if you ignore the subconscious, because subconscious, after thousands of years or millions of years of evolution, knows that killing this is bad, doing that is bad. You know what I mean? And we are ignoring the subconscious, we are ignoring emotions, and try to logically understand and make laws of what is good and bad. But we are ignoring the, everything that is beneath that. And that's why we are falling, because there is to some extent inherent good and bad. And that's the, what our ancient ancestors were trying to tell us in their myths, with all of those Satan, with all of this hero journey, that you cannot, stay only in the known, you have to explore. There is good and bad, there is necessity, there are things that are necessary, there are things in certain situations that are good for that situation. And it isn't about the logical thing, and that's why we often have problems with decision making, because if we are only in the logical mind, it is hard to make a decision, because logical mind is trying to evaluate everything. But maybe one of the decision is like synchronistically good for us, because after that synchronicity will happen and everything will align. You know what I mean? And materialistic, atheistic point of view is trying to ignore that, and it is, in my opinion, inherently satanic.
Yeah. And I think the myths are really important. It's like, and it is circumstantial, because that's the importance of myths, I think, because making decisions isn't just like a black and white thing. It's like, in some cultures, it's the biggest honor to have the, how do I put this? So it was a big honor to actually kill yourself in a certain situation where you died of honor, because I don't know the exact situation. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the actual story. But what I'm trying to say is that there was a higher purpose in that. I think it was an emperor in China that had actually, it was like considered an honor, and it was known within his group of people that he was doing something honorable. Whereas, there are circumstances nowadays where suicide is like, it's deemed as, it's a bit of a cop-out. It's someone that doesn't want to face reality kind of thing, or whatever, like their reality. But that's the importance of, storytelling and myths, is to understand perspectives and where morals come through, because yeah, it's there's more than one side of, you know, a certain decision or a certain story. So I think that's really important because
Mm-hmm.
everyone's got, yeah, their I don't know, their understanding of what's happened, even, you know, even when it comes to Atlantis or something like that, they have their own understanding of what that place was, of what, you know, it meant, and what kind of civilization it was. So yeah, I think that aspect of life needs to come back. Just even, you know, respecting that that is an aspect of life is more than enough, I think.
Yes, it is a good example of dying of honor, and that's why, they say, I think that it is a satanic agenda nowadays, because one of the, like, most of the symbols of Satanism or Satan are reversed. Like
Mm,
reversed Christian cross or reverse pentagram. We know that pentagram is actually a positive sign, but if you
mm,
reverse it, it is actually a satanic sign. The same with the Christian cross, it is reversed in Satanism. And they want to reverse. They want to say that, dying of honor is bad, but,
mm.
killing people in other ways which are not appropriate is good, or killing, unborn babies that are almost born, because, logically we think like that. And this is the satanic agenda. They want to reverse everything, and they want to reverse our entire thinking. And this is what our ancient ancestors saw, that we should be focused on the inner life of ours, and we should act appropriately. You can never make a logical laws that are complete in every area of the life. This is the satanic thinking, that you can reduce everything to logical thinking. We mentioned to conscious, to analytical mind, like Satan was, creating his own logical words, and he was thinking that he knows everything. Like in science, I mentioned that in history you think we know everything about the history. And you cannot reduce everything to just logical thinking. You cannot say that killing always in this is bad. Not because maybe sometimes there are like dying of honor or dying to sacrifice for something bigger, better. And this is the satanic agenda that wants to, like, Satan is this very egoistic intellectual superiority, and this intellectual superiority wants to reduce everything to just logic, and wants to have like cold laws that are logical, and they seem fine when we like hear them and when we read them, but when we apply them they are horrible in many cases.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's no emotional aspect to it. It's just completely logical, like trying to reason things where there is obvious repercussions to it. Like, yeah, it is. Yeah, that's almost kind of like where we're at with the mental illness paradigm and all, like, because it's just ripe everywhere. There's no sort of emotional integration. Of course, we have cognitive thinking and we have all sorts of things when it comes to psychology, but where do the emotions tie in? That's a big part of the paradigm that they're just taking out of the equation. And in my opinion, it has to be addressed. You know, it's not. It's how can you heal your minds if your emotions are all out of whack? It's not. It's not possible. Yeah.
Exactly. And they want us to live in that way, with all those medications for everything, with
Yeah.
all the entertainment. They want you to ignore your own inner self and just go to what is objectively right. And this is, the same with science. Science wants to be objective. So science is one of the adherents of the modern satanic agenda, unfortunately. Unfortunately, because science could be helpful and effective in many
Yeah.
ways, but it is very limited. And it is a very bad world in which we are ignoring everything, and it is like being fake. And when you are fake, you are objectively looking perfect, you're looking good like a narcissist, etc. But then on the inside, you're totally different. You fake all your ideal self. And the same is with the modern world. They want you, to forget about everything, go to entertainment, and live as objectively good citizens of the New World Order.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's not about, like, we all have the negative ego and thoughts and stuff like that. And it's, I think, about integrating them, because we have those traits as well. It's not like we don't get influence, like we're living in it, of course. But it's understanding the fact that these affect us. But we have the power to overcome it. And I think a lot of people get lost in that because they forget their power. And it's like we're being trained to forget, like to not believe in ourselves, and that's the main thing. I think a lot of people don't believe in themselves enough to overcome these things, because I mean, I'm still there. Like, it's hard to just consistently believe in what you know is right, because these adversary groups, or whatever you want to call them, are constantly influencing us. Like, as soon as you go out your door, it's there. And it's like, you just got to keep reminding yourself that, why are you doing this? And, just believe in why you're doing it. Because, like you said, inspiration, or like, it can be anything, have your intention there. And I think things will synchronize, like you said, and manifest in your life. And I think that's where humanity is going. I feel like it. I really hope, because I don't see any other way out of it. I mean, with the logical thinking, we do need that. We definitely need, like, in terms of critically analyzing what's happening, but we need also the magical aspect, I guess, of why we're here and what we're doing here. It keeps us going, like, ultimately. I mean, there is another saying that ultimately nothing matters, and understanding is knowing that there is no understanding, actually. But it's like, it's a process of understanding just why your own intentions have manifested here. I think that's what keeps me going anyway. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have belief in yourself, then you have no self-value, self-worth, and that's really important. That's really important. Yeah. No matter what you do in life, you could just be a cleaner. It doesn't matter, as long as you understand the overall picture of, your own self-worth, and you have that intact. That's really important, because these satanic agendas are about, like, inverting everything, like you said, having no self-worth, not understanding what's going on, in terms of morality and stuff like that. It's like, well, we definitely do have morality, like good and bad and all that. But being balanced, it's a very tough path. Very tough. Yeah, and very lonely.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's hope for all the best. It's over an hour. Thanks for having me
Oh, yeah.
on, and I hope that everyone watching enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Alexander. I'm glad that you agreed to come on, and I thank you for your time. And I definitely recommend your book. It's been great so far. And please, yeah, that's the original. That's the new cover. But yes, and all the best in your new research as well. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.